Right now in Kerala, a stomach infection most of us have never heard of has led to 5 deaths and infected around 147 people. 4 of those deaths just happened in the last few weeks. Most of the people falling sick are children. This infection is called Shigellosis. And the story of how it keeps coming back to Kerala tells you something about water, about schools, and about a state that often spots an outbreak before anyone else does. Let me break it down. Shigella is a bacteria, a really small one, and the smallness matters. But I'll come back to that. Here's what it does. You swallow it, it travels down to your gut, and it attacks the lining of your large intestine. It doesn't just sit there and upset your stomach. It actually burrows into the wall of your intestine and damages the tissue. That's why it's not a regular stomach bug. When the gut lining gets torn up like that, you don't just get diarrhea. You get diarrhea along with blood and mucus in it. That's the body's lining coming away. The symptoms show up fast, usually within 1 to 3 days of the bacteria getting in. Diarrhea, often bloody, stomach cramps, fever, and the constant feeling of needing to go to the toilet even when there's nothing left. Because the inflamed gut keeps sending the signal. For most healthy adults, it's a miserable few days, but the body fights it off in about a week. The real danger is in who it hits the hardest. Small children, older people, anyone already weak or malnourished. And with children, it's specifically the dehydration that affects them. Think about what's happening. The infection is draining fluid out of a small child through constant diarrhea, and a child has very little to spare. They can dry out dangerously fast, sometimes before the people around them realize how serious it's gotten. That's the part that turns a stomach infection into a death. Here's the part that explains why it spreads in schools. Shigella travels by what doctors call the fecal-oral route. That sounds a bit clinical, so I'll explain it simply. The bacteria lives in the stool of an infected person. If that person doesn't wash their hands properly and touches food, water, a tap, door, a person, the next person picks it up and swallows a tiny amount without ever even knowing. And it really is a tiny amount. According to the World Health Organization, as few as 10 to 100 bacteria can make you sick. Most germs need thousands. This one needs almost nothing. That's why it rips through a classroom or a household once it gets a foothold. And why contaminated water, a single wall, a batch of ice made from dirty water can seed an entire cluster. Now let's talk about how it's treated. The good news first. For most people, you don't fight Shigella with medicine. You fight it with fluids. Rest, water, oral rehydration, letting your body clear it out over a few days. That's about it. When a case is severe and there's blood, high fever, or a vulnerable patient, doctors turn to antibiotics. And this is where I have to flag something that the Center for Disease Control has been warning about loudly. Shigella is getting harder to treat. Strains are showing up that resist the standard antibiotics, sometimes all 5 of the usual ones at once. This isn't a Kerala problem specifically, it's a global one. But it raises the stakes everywhere. The thing you'd normally lean on may not work. So where did the Kerala outbreak even come from? This time, it started in the north of the state. The current wave goes back to around March 2026 when a 3-year-old girl passed away and around a dozen children connected to her fell sick. An Anganwadi was shut. By June, it had already spread. As of June 16, Kerala's Directorate of Health Services put it at 147 confirmed cases and 5 deaths. Schools and institutions in Wayanad were placed under watch, hundreds of households monitored. The pattern points back to water and to places where children gather. The Food Safety Department started cracking down on packaged water plants, eateries, and street stalls, and authorities began chlorinating wells. The exact source of this outbreak hasn't been pinned to a single point. What officials are working with is the pattern, not the confirmed origin. Has India dealt with this before? Yes, and specifically Kerala has. The first time it really made news was in December 2020 in the middle of COVID. An 11-year-old boy passed away, around 40 cases turned up, and health workers went well by well cleaning water sources. A study in the Indian Journal of Medical Research described it as one of the leading bacterial causes of diarrhea in the country and argued the real fix isn't just treatment, it's clean water and sanitation, plus a proper vaccine, which has not been developed yet. Why Kerala every time? Here's the question people keep asking. Why does Kerala keep reporting things first? And the answer is the opposite of what you'd assume. Kerala is not sicker, it's that Kerala looks harder. The state has one of the strongest public health and surveillance systems in India, high health awareness, and a very large population working abroad, which means infections get caught and tested early. That's why everything from COVID to rare strains often surface in Kerala first. Detection is a sign of a system working, not failing. So Shigella, a tiny bacteria spread by unwashed hands and unsafe water that hits children the hardest, is getting harder to treat. For Kerala, it's a recurring visitor, not a stranger. And the simplest defenses are still the oldest ones. Clean water, washed hands, and catching it early, which, to its credit, is one thing Kerala has always been good at. For more stories like this, follow DeKoder.